welcome one of our creators on the island who not only is strong in one of those arts, but two. So downstairs, if you didn't notice or you weren't told, Donna's paintings are throughout the bookstore, above the bookcases. So on your way out, take a look, take a deep breath, refill your glass with wine, and just savor the moments we have to be out of our houses, right? So we welcome you, Donna, back to the stage at Story and Song with book number 4, The Shackle. And we look forward to hearing all about the adventure. Welcome. Please join me in welcoming Donna Overland.
Thank you to Donna and to Mark and for providing this beautiful paradise, this haven on our island. It's definitely an asset. And I just want to thank all of you for coming. I'm honored that you all are here, and I hope I'm worthy of your time when we're finished here. I also wanted to thank Connor for setting up the live stream. It will be on Facebook, and also to Bob Eberly and his lovely wife, Nancy. They're making, you know how movies have movie trailers? Well, they're making a book trailer that we can use and put on YouTube and different places. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting my writing. I see a lot of you have read all of the books, and I hope this one doesn't disappoint. I'm very excited about this one. This one, for me as the writer, was more fun. It's a lot of fun things that are true to my life in this book, which gives it a little extra flair for me, the writer, and I hope that you enjoy reading about it too. So these past 8 months, the COVID pandemic, we're having to adapt and adjust. And so I dedicated this book to the people who have died of the pandemic and also to the victims of human trafficking. It is a prevalent crime in our society. And here at Story and Song, they had a writer here. Her name was, you might have to help me, Donna, Talon Carner. Did I say her name right? And she gave us some lectures, and I learned so much about human trafficking from that and aspects of it that I had never even thought of before, such as they use social media a lot to target their victims. And it can be something so innocent as a child, just writing, a teenage girl has a fight with her parents, and she writes on to her friends, oh, I hate my parents. Kind of, you know, benign. What child hasn't said that? But then they pick up on this and they friend that teenager and they play into that. And so the teenager then thinks that this person, these traffickers, are their friends. And that's how they gain trust. And she also made another point of the traffickers will target women in prison because release dates are public records. And so they'll get these women in prison, they'll send them letters, they will send them packages, the same with the teenagers on social media, they friend them. And so when the woman walks out of prison on that last day, goes through the gates, well, guess who's waiting there for her? So those are things that I hadn't thought of. And she also mentioned that it's such a big business that so many different entities are involved in it, like the hotel chains are involved in it, the transportation, airlines, trains, taxis. There are so many different aspects. And if there's a big sporting event, she said, well, then the need goes up and they'll ship in more children and more women and also young men to service these people. So it really is a horrific crime. And I think it's something that we need to bring an awareness to. And here in Florida and in Georgia and Texas, it's some of the biggest hubs for that. So I just wanted to write about it. And as in all my books, I bring up one social issue or one issue that I feel is very important and we need to talk about. So just in review, I have my banner behind me, and I think most of you here have read. The Trinity Knot was a sexual assault. The Zeppelin Bin talked about unintended pregnancy, where we learned all about the different abortion laws and rules in every state. And then the Hitch was about depression and also prescription drug addiction. And so now we have the Shackle, which is the human trafficking. And I name all of my books after knots. And with that, I paint the knot. And so I brought along my painting of the Shackle. And on the back of all my books is ghosted behind the description is the actual painting. I didn't think it was, we tried in this one to put the actual painting of the knot on the front of the book, and it just didn't look good. So it's going to stay on the back. So I started writing in January, it was January 2nd of 2014 on a dare from a friend. And who would have thought, me, the least of all, would have thought that this would become almost like a career path for me, because I never intended to be an author or a writer. And it just happened that I guess I have a vivid imagination, is what I've been told by my editor. She goes, wow. And I had no idea that I had this gift of writing, and it's really fun in retirement to have something new. And I would encourage all of you to venture out, try something new, and don't be afraid to try something new. You never know what might connect with you. So last June 28th, I think was the date that I released the third book, and it was supposed to be a trilogy in the Knot Series 1. And I thought I was finished because I had invested that year in a nonfiction book, which I am still perfecting and writing. And several people here, Mary and Regina, have been my beta readers for that book. And it needs some polish and it needs more. And they have both given me some really good ideas, and there are thoughts and opinions on how to work that book. So that book is coming out probably next year. But I had taken the fiction to the side, and in August I had to go through my records to find out, well, when did I start writing the Shackle? So June 28th was release date of the Hitch, and I thought we were finished. Steve thought we were finished. And then Stan, a secondary character in the book, he kept talking to me, and I know that sounds a little crazy, but that's how it is. He kept saying, you can't leave me this way. Now, none of my books, even though they all start pretty horrific, and I've been told they're dark, I don't look at them as dark because I see that as reality, but I'm told that they're a little dark. They always end on a happy note, and I believe that you deserve, as my readers, to feel good about the book when it's over. So I always have a happy ending to them. But Stan, so I didn't leave Stan broken. If you read The Hitch, and I'm not going to go through it, I don't want to ruin it for anybody who may not have read it. But I have fixed him, didn't I? What do you think? Did I fix him? Not. I didn't. I have fixed him, but I didn't make him whole. I think that's a good way to say it. He still wasn't whole. And so he kept telling me, you cannot leave me this way. So he kept telling me that, and I started writing in August. And then due to COVID, we had that stay-at-home order. Well, that's a writer's paradise. So I would write 1,000 to 2,000 words every day. And this is probably the fastest written book, but it's also the thickest book. It's over 300 pages, so you're not getting less just because it was faster. And it seemed that the more I was at home in front of my computer and in my office, the more exciting the story got. It's different than the other books. It has more action. It has more adventure. I like to describe it as a modern day Western. It is not politically correct. It has guns in it. I will tell you that up front. It's in Texas. And I wore my boots today. Did you see that? I tried to dress like a Texan. So why Stan? Okay, because he's talking in my ear. So let's talk about Stan. Stan came into the series in the last pages of the very first book. He's Rita's son, her eldest. And we don't know too much about him other than he has broad shoulders. And he's the elder son. And why should you care about Stan? Well, the second book, Stan's, Gabby found refuge with Stan, and he tried to help her. And Stan was almost perfect in the second book. In fact, some readers thought that Gabby should have picked Stan instead of Brett. So Brett, he's like, what do you say, ladies? He wasn't a 10, maybe a 9.5. You know, Brett's kind of good at everything. He's got those emerald eyes. He's got that dimple. He knows how to talk to the women and flirt. And Stan's more stand-backish, and he's got a receding hairline, and he's 30. I think I wrote it down. He's 33, I think, when we first met him. And he's just an ordinary guy. And in the third book, he was kind of a jerk. So I could understand if you're thinking, well, why would she devote a book to somebody who was such a jerk? Well, he was broken, and we've all made mistakes in life, right? And nobody's perfect. So there was Stan. And even though he had his accident and he had a lot of pain and he has a limp, a residual effect from the accident, he was broken, but he's more broken, heartbroken, spiritually and in his soul than he is physically. And so he has a lot of decisions to make. He has decisions to make about his future. If you remember, Stan came from Washington, D.C. He wasn't from Texas, but he needed help rehabbing, and so he came home to Mother, and Mother was in Texas. So that's how Stan got to Texas. So he has these decisions to make, and even though he seems hopeless a little bit, he has a reason to chase and to push on. And I would like to call that even a hope, even somebody who's down and out still has some hope. And that's Stan, and the human spirit lives on. And so that's my guy. So what do I do with Stan? Well, one of my beta readers for my very first book, who helped me with the cattle and the ranch part of the book, she says, Donna, you need a dog in your book. And if you know, there hasn't been a dog, has there? So what better way to have something positive in your life than go get a rescue dog? So that's what Stan does. He finds a friend. And then it's, does the dog need saved, or does the dog save Stan? I think it works both ways there when you have a friendship like that. So we give him a dog. And when Steve and I were in New Zealand, we went to a sheep farm. And I had already written the dog into the story, but it was the exact same dog. It was a Borador. And that is half Labrador, half Border Collie. And it was a delightful dog. It was a smart dog. It was a lovable dog. And I thought, oh, how cute. And I put the dog in the last newsletter. Did you see him, Ryder? So look in there. And that's why I picked a dog, and the story goes on. So I hope you learn to like Stan and see his quest. And he just didn't want to be a main character in the story. He whispered in my ear before I wrote the story, he wanted to be a hero. I mean, he wanted more than just to be relieved of his brokenness. He wanted to shine. So I don't want to say a lot about the book. I'm going to say a lot more. We'll go through questions first, and if the questions don't hit on those points, then I'll bring up the reading that Donna had suggested. So does anybody have any questions about this book? Regina?
So you've covered some pretty controversial topics in your book. You mentioned that. How do you go about picking the themes? And I guess as a second part of that, are any of the themes or characters from your own life experiences or people in your life?
Good question. My books are contemporary fiction with splattered with romance, is how I like to say. And I wish them, though, to be meaningful. And you can read them on the surface as a beach read, but then you can also dive deeper, and that's where these issues come up. And I choose topics that are current, and I choose topics that I feel need to be given a voice and an awareness to, as I explained earlier. And we talked about the human trafficking part of it. So I won't go through that again. And then the second part of your question was about the characters. There's a mix of characters, and when I made Rita's characters, Will and Stan, I have two boys. They could be Will and Stan. And my boys don't necessarily like that, because in the beginning I'd threaten them and I'd say, if you upset me, wait till you see what your character's gonna do. And my older son has told me several times he is not happy about Stan, especially in that third book. He's told me that. But Brett is a lot like Matthew McConaughey, and Matthew McConaughey is a Texan, and he and I are both alumni of the University of Texas. So, you know, he's a hook 'em horn guy. So when you read about Brett, can you see Matthew McConaughey, the brown hair, the little curl to it on his neck? So that's, and then we have a friend, some of you in here know her, Suzanne, who is a fellow author that lives here on the island, sometimes part-time. And she can't sing. So this is, I hope she laughs when she reads about herself. So I put her in the book. And this Suzanne in my book, she sings in French when she thinks no one is listening. So that was a little play on that. So I take little characteristics of real people that I know, and I sort of write them in. And it's real easy to come up with names. Because I'll name lawyers or detectives after somebody in my life that is a lawyer or a detective. I'll use their last names. And so I have fun with that part. It's like, okay, what should I call them? And so that's fun for me. Did I answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay. Mary?
Donna, I've read all of your books and I love them.
Thank you.
In your books, you always have an underlying theme. Do you in this one?
Always. I always have an underlying theme. And let's see, where should we start? I think I'm going to start with the cover. The cover of the book is a Texas landscape, and it's kind of dark. But that could signify Stan's current state of mind. And it could also be because human trafficking is dark. And I don't think I'm giving anything away when I say that the victim, it's the first 2 pages of the book, she's escapes and she's almost dead. But I put the Milky Way in the sky as a emblem and a figure of hope, because there's always hope. And the stars play a huge, just the image of a star, you will see it over and over again in different ways. So look for that, because that was important to me. And also the quote in the book. And it's a short quote, but I cannot just sit here. It's by a priest back in the 1500s. And each one of my books has a quote in the beginning of the book that I think describes the whole book. And this one, the greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself. So Stan tries to copy or mimic Brett in so many ways. And he finds out that that doesn't work for him because he's not Brett, right? He's Stan. He needs to find what makes Stan unique, what makes him shine. Another theme that I have is the victim, one of the victims. There's 2. But one of the victims is a psychology major. So she has to go from being the psychology professional to the victim, the professional who helps other people, to the victim who needs the help, to a place of healing so she can get back to being the professional, psychology professional. So it's kind of nice to just have that in the back of your mind. So when you read those scenes, you can see the different stages that she's going through. And let me see if I can think of, I think that's all of them. Yep, I think there's probably more, but I don't know them right now. Okay.
I have a question.
Valerie?
You've talked a little bit about being inspired by real people in your life and creating your characters. But I was wondering if there are some personal experiences that you've had that are included in the story. Tell us about.
This book has a lot. There is the funniest one, and Steve has read the book. I think he's the only person other than the editor who has read this book. I finally got him to read the book. I asked him for months. And when he first picked me up on our first date, blind date, he showed up at the door in this. Now you have to realize this was the late 70s. He showed up at the door in this ridiculous looking plaid jacket. It was like light blue with tan, with cream, and it was an expensive jacket. I mean, Steve has always likes to look nice and is real on top of fashion. I thought it was ridiculous. I put that ridiculous jacket in the story. I already told you about the dog. And then I'm so glad that Victor is here. Victor's my neighbor, Victor Dean. And I'm going to share our story. So was it last Christmas, I think? We were going to go to some holiday party or something, I think. And we met at Victor's condo for drinks before we went. And he had found out that my tennis team in Texas, the captains, like to shoot tequila. And that's how I learned how to shoot tequila, because if you're on a team, you're a team player. Okay. So Victor had this big bottle of tequila, and it was the Clase Azul tequila. And They're really known for a big white ceramic bottle with hand-painted flowers on it, blue flowers. But they have this very unique dome-shaped lid. And so Victor goes, I got you some really special tequila. It's like, okay. And he says, now, because he's got a lot of flair, this man. Please talk to him when we're over. He said, first you have to ring the bell. And so he taps the big dome lid and it rings like a bell. It reminds you of like the bells that they have like at the post office downtown. Have you realized, like, if nobody's there? They have one now at the counter at the photo department at Walgreens, and teachers used to have them on their desk. You ring the bell. So we rang the bell before we opened the tequila, and then we had a shot or two of this tequila. So I really enjoyed that experience. So that tequila shooting scene is in the book, and they do it the exact same way.
And that's my only claim to fame.
Wow, I thank you for that scene. So that's in the book, and there's a boating scene in this book, and I can't believe it's taken me 4 books to get to a boating scene, because Steve and I lived on a lake in Lake Travis in Texas. And I'm not going to tell you anything about that scene, but whatever you read happened. That's all I'm going to say. It's true. So that happened. And then there's a painting scene in the book. And that's where I marked the page. And some of you are more visual, and I reread that scene 2 days ago, and I thought I should find a picture of that scene because you might not get it from the description. This was an actual commissioned painting that I painted for one of my friends in Austin. She had seen a small or 2x2 painting in an art gallery from a UT professor who had since passed. So there's no way she could get him to paint her painting for her. But she wanted it to be 4 foot by 5 foot, so pretty big. And so I brought a not very good picture, but it kind of describes what the painting looked like. It'll give you a visual, and I can read part of it. I hope I didn't move. No, I didn't. I'm not going to read the whole thing about, there's 2 artists that influenced me in my life, and one of them was Nicholas Simmons. He has since passed, and the other one was Ann Templeton, and she has since passed. So my artist in the book, there's always an artist, is Nicholas Templeton, to honor these 2 people that had taught me a lot of my painting. So this, I think I'll start from there. I don't think that's giving any of the story away if I talk about her art. There's always a party in the books. Have you noticed that? There's always a party. There's always an art opening. There's always, they say write what you know, and that's what I know. Okay. So she's talking about, this Nicholas Templeton has a very bold style, and Gabby's kind of more reserved. So he does a lot of palette knife painting, if you're familiar with just slapping it on, instead of using a brush, slapping it on with the palette knife. So it seems that Nicholas Templeton at one time took this very step. She swoops the palette knife into the orange heap, lifting the bulk of the paint to the blade. With one quick stroke, she applies it to the canvas. In an effort to clean the palette knife of the remaining paint, she turns the knife on edge, creating a partner for the first. This technique is straightforward and surprisingly fun. But can she fashion a desirable composition using it? Gathering the cadmium yellow from the palette, she reenacts the same movements. The strokes are vertical in appearance, similar to notes on a musical scale bundled tightly. The more she thinks of this one person and these other people, who I won't name, the more aggressive her strokes become. Overhead, though, Beethoven's symphony pairs to perfection as it equals in rhythm as well as the emotion. Dun, 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 dun. It is difficult for her to keep the fast tempo, stroke after stroke. She lays bearings, tones of different colors and hues next to each other. Some contrast and others enhance. Her energy is high as she works the canvas from top to bottom. Stanza after stanza emerges on the composition. Her palette of paints empties quickly, but to keep in tempo, she reverts to squeezing the paint from the tubes directly. The method is physically and mentally liberating as one brilliant color after another is showcased. Finally, in contrast to the busy composition, a simple field of yellow ochre fills the open, empty space above the first stanza, giving a title to this musical masterpiece. So reading that, you might not get the full gist of it. So I thought I'd bring a little visual for you. Let's see. Any more questions? Marty?
When you write, do
Mhm.
you ever write yourself into a corner on a plot line, and how do you get out of it and go back? You have to go back and start over with the whole plot line. It seems like as a writer, you have a certain idea, but maybe you get to a certain point with the character and go, I'm not sure that's where I want to go. How do you get out of that? And you rewrite? You have to go back and completely recreate?
I have never gone back and recreated.
Okay.
Never. Why? I do not have any kind of an outline.
Mhm.
I just write. And with this book, there were two problems. When I hadn't finished it yet, but we were getting so close. And I want my stories to be believable. And there were two problems. Do you know they fixed themselves? I was shocked. How they just do. I don't know. It's people say, well, how can you say that? I knew they were a problem. I'm like, how can I make that believable? Or how can I get from point A to point Z? Because we're now at Z. We're trying to close the book. It's getting, and it just sort of happened. I don't know. Some of the best ideas happen when you don't think about it at all. I can't sit at my computer and say, well, how am I going to do this? It's better to go take a walk. Some of my best ideas come in the shower. I mean, it just happens. And I'm thinking, okay, I can do that. And I was amazed how it fixed itself. Yeah, I tell people it fixes itself. They don't, do you believe me when I tell you that? No, I don't think you do. But it did. It does, and it works. So I guess if you made an outline, and they say in writing classes that I've taken, Marty, they say when you get stuck, and it sounds like what your question is, that somebody is stuck, they say blow up something, set off a bomb. Set off, and there are things like that in this book, and I had to learn all about rifles and guns. I had to learn about dynamite. I had to learn about, and I said something to my little neighbor. She's a teenager from Georgia, and she goes, oh, I know all about tenorite. And I'm like, how do you know that? I guess tenorite is a favorite hobby of Georgia boys from Georgia. She knew all about it, and she told me quite some stories. It's like, whoa. So I learned a lot about that. I learned a lot about cattle ranching, that you sing to the cattle to keep them calm. And so this book has just so many different aspects in it. I did set off a bomb, but I didn't set it off because I was stuck. I set it off for other reasons. Any other questions? Well, I thank you all for coming. Donna, do you have anything for me?
Yeah, I would like to invite everybody to grab some copies of the book. If you don't have some of the older books, they're all here. So you can meet and talk with Donna at this author signing table. She has graciously catered this event, so please eat. There are cookies that you can take with if you don't feel like you want to have them now. Chicken salad and fig crostini. So and there's wine left and iced tea as well. So stay and enjoy yourselves, and thank you for coming out. Thank you, Donna, for
Thank
telling us about your music.